Do you like AI? I like AI. Or at the very least, I like AI chatbots and not AI art, which is a term I will use very loosely based on everything that we have for it at the moment. And I think this whole AI trend really started with ChatGPT, an amazing chat tool that mimics human language so you can do things like send off emails, have it write papers for you even though you'll probably get expelled for that, and many other things. So why not make it make a champion for League of Legends? Over the past couple of days, I've been asking my community over on YouTube what type of champion they would like to see ChatGPT produce. And from the polls that we have been doing on the channel, we want to see a top laner from the Shadow Isles that is a fighter and uses a special resource similar to Renekton's Fury, Tryndamere's Rage, or Rumble's Heat. Before we get into the festivities of making an amalgamation of different top laners, because I've done this a few times and ChatGPT basically either makes Lord Death of Murder Mountain that wins you the game as soon as you pick it, or the simplest thing that looks like it should have been coming out in 2009. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to be updated whenever any of my new content comes out. Let's go. So I'm here in ChatGPT and we're going to be putting in a very specific prompt to make sure that we get the best initial response from the AI. I've done this a few times and you really need to be specific with what you're asking for so that ChatGPT can get the best result to you. So I'm going to type in, make a champion for League of Legends. This champion should be designed to be played in the top lane. This champion should be from the Shadow Isles. This champion should be from the fighter class. And this champion should use a special resource like Tryndamere, Renekton, or Rumble to empower their abilities. Now I'm going to hit enter here and we're going to see what ChatGPT has to come up with. Look at it go. So something I just want to comment on before I do anything. I've done the Shadow Isles a few times to work out all the kinks. It really loves starting Shadow Isles champions with MOR. I don't know what it is, but I've got Morven, I think I have another version of Morven somewhere else, both an E instead of a Y. It really loves more. I just find that really funny. So let's start with our initial version of this champion, and then we're going to be balancing this champion to make it better and more reliable, because as I said before, you either get Lord Death of Murder Mountain, you instantly win the game if this champion is picked because he deletes all of the other champions from the game. Or you get, hello, this is literally Crash Bandicoot for the PS2. You have the ability to jump and spin. Huzzah! And you get nothing in between. It is either super simple or you win the game amalgamation of the most broken and OP champions you can imagine. Morven, the Shadow Reaper. Role, Fighter. Origin, Shadow Isles. Resource, Soul Essence. Appearance. Morven appears as a spectral knight draped in tattered ethereal armor. His eyes glow with an eerie blue light, and wisps of dark energy trail behind him as he moves. His weapon is a jagged, shadowy blade that crackles with energy. Lore. Now, lore is usually kind of bad, and from what I've seen, ChatGPT doesn't really understand what the Shadow Isles are in League of Legends, so we'll see what this does. Once a valiant knight from Demacia, okay, that's actually kind of promising already, Morven fell in battle against the forces of the Shadow Isles. However, instead of finding peace in death, he was ensnared by the dark energies that permeate the Cursed Isles. Now, as a twisted revenant, he seeks redemption through merciless combat, hunting down the abominations that plague the land. That actually isn't too bad, in all honesty. I mean, you have someone from Demacia, and the mist can appear in Demacia, so that works. Instead of being able to find peace in death, he was turned into something by the forces of the Shadow Isles, which makes sense as far as I'm aware for the lore of the Shadow Isles. And now he seeks redemption because he has at least some of his humanity left, but the monstrosity of the Shadow Isles has turned into something that seeks redemption through merciless combat. So honestly, lore-wise, I give it a solid 6 out of 10. It actually works, and that is saying something because ChatGPT usually gets the lore very wrong. But I know what you're all really here for, and that is the abilities. Passive Soul Harvest. Morven collects soul essence from fallen enemies and nearby deaths, and this resource fuels his abilities, granting bonus effects when fully charged. Now that is interesting. It's kind of like a Senna or a Thresh passive, but instead of giving him bonus stats, it empowers his abilities. I'd really love to see how that would work. I feel like it could be really nice, but it could also be a little bit hard to stack up at points. Like, it'd be really good in lane, but then when you're trying to get into team fights, and you don't have anything to get your soul essence off of, it might be a little bit bad. So I think the inconsistency with that could be bad, but I love the idea of having like a Senna or a Thresh passive that just gives you bonuses to your abilities when you get fully charged. Maybe we can actually make that a little bit different, but we'll get back to that when we go through the whole kit. Q is Shadow Strike. Morven dashes forward, slashing enemies in his path with his shadowy blade. Enemies hit take physical damage, and Morven gains a stack of soul essence for each enemy champion hit. If Morven is at full soul essence, Shadow Strike deals bonus damage and heals him for a percentage of the damage dealt. Now this is actually kinda cool. I'm imagining this sort of like a Viego W mixed with his Q, so he dashes forward and he strikes forward, and then he gains the soul essence as he hits champions. W is Spectral Barrier. Morven summons a Spectral Barrier around himself, reducing incoming damage for a short duration. If Morven is at full soul essence, Spectral Barrier also grants him a shield equal to a percentage of his maximum health. I wish it was a little bit cooler, because let's be honest, right now it's basically just Garen's W, right? It's a DR plus a shield if he's at max, so I want to change that one for sure. E is Haunting Siphon. Morven releases a wave of dark energy in a target direction, damaging and slowing enemies hit. If Morven is at full soul essence, Haunting Siphon fears enemies hit for a short duration. I like this idea of his E being like this cool little cone of damage, but at the same time, Haunting Siphon seems a little bit of a weird name when it doesn't even heal him, so I think we're going to come back and change that for sure. Finally, his ultimate is Revenant's Wrath, and to be completely honest, most of the ultimates that ChatGPT makes are just, I'm a bigger guy now and I do more things, blah, 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 blah. And I feel like this one's going to be very similar based off of the name of it. Morven channels the dark energies within him, transforming into a terrifying specter for a brief period. During this time, Morven gains increased movement speed, AD, and bonus lifesteal. Additionally, his basic attacks deal bonus magic damage based on a percentage of the target's maximum health. If Morven scores a takedown while Revenant's Wrath is active, its duration is extended. You know, out of all of the just, I'm a bigger guy now ultimates that ChatGPT has made, this one has to be one of the better ones. I like that it, is a stat increase, but it also has the, oh hey, if you score a takedown while it's active, the duration is extended, like we see in champions like Nefiri or Vayne. And it also gives him bonus magic damage based on a percentage of a target's max health, which is something that perfectly makes sense for an ultimate ability. Overall, I think Morven is actually not that bad for his Q and his ults, and overall, his kit is pretty decent just based off of the very start, but we're here to make sure that it's better and therefore could actually theoretically be in the game. So I'm suggesting to ChatGPT, Morven's passive seems too unreliable in how quick he can stack it up for his empowered abilities. Make it so either his passive can be stacked up through other methods, or add soul essence generation to his E and R. I did this because, again, being able to only get it off of hitting enemy champions with his Q, or being able to have units die around him, is not that reliable when it comes to empowering basic abilities. Especially when you compare it to, again, people like Tryndamere Rumble or Renekton who get it very quickly. His W should do more than just be a damage reduction or a shield, so add another effect to it if people hit him while the W is active. I did this because, again, just a shield or just damage reduction is pretty much unheard of in League of Legends. Almost every shield that you can think of in League of Legends does more than just shield the target. His E should also have to do more with siphoning. Add either a damage over time effect that heals Morven when his E hits enemy champions, or a heal over time effect that heals Morven when his E hits any enemy that gets increased off of multiple enemies' hits. I think this is going to be a pretty good change to Morven, and it also kind of plays into this idea that I see with his Q, where he is this guy that kind of goes in and just leeches damage, but all of his base stats would be pretty mediocre, and so he wouldn't be that tanky. He'd have terrible health scaling, he'd have terrible armor and MR scaling, and overall, if you wanted him to be this big tanky menace, he would need to get some really good itemization going. But he makes up for that very bad health scaling and that very bad tank scaling in general by having really good ways to lifesteal and heal off of his opponents. Basically, the Shadow Isles version of someone like Aatrox or Vladimir. With his revised passive, Soul Harvest, Morven collects soul essence from fallen enemies, nearby deaths, and whenever he successfully lands basic attacks or abilities on enemy champions. Revised W, Spectral Barrier, Morven summons a spectral barrier around himself, reducing incoming damage for a short duration. If Morven is hit by an enemy champion while Spectral Barrier is active, he gains a brief burst of movement speed and his next basic attack deals bonus damage. This is, in essence, Nocturne's W, but instead of being a spell shield, it is just a shield, and if he gets hit, he gets movement speed and his next biggest attack does bonus damage instead of just getting a big attack speed steroid, which is honestly kinda nice. It incentivizes Morven to use his W effectively to reduce damage for big hits, and also makes the enemy try and bait out the W so that he doesn't get this giant burst of damage that he can easily put onto you due to the extra movement speed. And with his revised E, Haunting Siphon, Morven releases a wave of dark energy in a target duration, damaging and slowing enemies hit. Additionally, enemies hit by a Haunting Siphon are afflicted with a damage over time effect that heals Morven for a percentage of the damage dealt. If Morven hits multiple enemies with Haunting Siphon, the healing effect is increased. This is honestly exactly what I was looking for. This gives him a better way to stack his soul essence, his empowered abilities, and just the basic effects of the abilities are a little bit better to allow him a better kit overall, and now we can play into this idea of a guy who is pretty squishy through his base stats, but is able to heal and get rid of damage through his abilities. I think overall, you should also probably have him have like a low attack speed ratio so that he can't just build a bunch of attack speed like a Yone or Yasuo, but overall, let's put the whole kit together and see what amalgamation of a champion we're dealing with here. So, based off the whole kit here that we have for Morven, his passive is essentially very similar to a combination of Thresh and Senna and then Renekton and Tryndamere, where he gains this thing off of attacking and using his abilities and hitting enemy champions with his abilities, and he also gains his special resource off of things dying around him. His Q is effectively Viego's W plus Viego's Q in the sense that he dashes forward this little bit and then strikes you, and you can deal extra damage and get a little bit of a heal if he's empowered. His barrier is basically a different version of Nocturne's spell shield, and I honestly love it. Just being able to get this buff after getting hit by an ability, so it really kind of is this tug of war between enemies trying to bait out the ability and Morven trying to bait out their damaging abilities is super nice. Haunting Siphon, I just love dots that heal you in general, so I love this ability, and I wouldn't imagine it to be some giant area of effect, just decent enough. Honestly, you could probably just imagine it as like any line skill shot that just goes forward, but I'm using Mordekaiser's E because that makes the most sense in my head for the range of the ability. And finally, his ultimate is very similar to many other ultimates that are these big buffs, but Renekton, Nasus, and Naafiri seem to be the best ideas because you get these massive bonuses to yourself. He also generates soul essence while his ultimate is active, and if he scores a takedown while it's active, the duration is extended. So let's put together all of the various champions that make up Morven, and let's see what we get. Oh god. Oh, that's... I think I might have just thrown up off of seeing this. So, yeah, that's our new champion that ChatGPT made. And it's a creation that is certainly 200 years of game design experience. Right there. Ugh. Anyways, Riot August, because that is the only champion designer I know, and also the only one I respect, I expect Morven to be in the game by Monday, or I will be launching the missiles. Anyways, my name has been Tarian, and I hope you all have enjoyed watching ChatGPT make this monstrosity of a champion, and if you did, go hit the subscribe button down below to be updated whenever any of my new content comes out, including funny stuff like this, or educational and funny stuff like the terrible guides to League of Legends, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye!